One of the problems we're expecting a lot in New Zealand is that there'll be many people who've heard the gospel and have rejected it. But we quickly realize that there's a new generation that is coming up of people who have not necessarily rejected the gospel. They just haven't heard it. I remember this time we were in the town square. It's a public square, like Ambassador, only with grass and people can rest. And we were singing Kenyan music and inviting people to different functions. And so using this music, people would come and gather and just listen and ask questions. And I approached these two young girls who were wearing high school uniform because they were enjoying the music. And I used that opportunity to share with them why we were singing and dancing and celebrating New Zealand 200 years of Christianity. And I also invited them to come for one of the functions that we were going to hold later in the week. But these two girls seemed to be a little bit, uncomfortable with that conversation. And so I picked it up and I asked them, sorry, which church do you go to? Because I thought maybe I'm inviting them to a church they don't go to. And the two girls said, the first one said, I don't go to church. I've never been to church. And the second one said the same. I've never been to church. And these girls were 15 years old. And so I asked them, your parents have never taken you to church? And the girl said, our parents, as far as we are concerned, have never been to church. And that opened me to a new reality. I realized that these girls actually, they have not been exposed to the gospel at all. And so whereas there are people who are rejecting the gospel, I wouldn't say these girls are rejecting the gospel. They just haven't heard it. And as we talked further and shared with them, I realized that the school they were in does not talk or share anything about Christianity. And so I quickly realized these girls will not hear the gospel at home because their parents are not Christians and have never gone to church. They will not hear it in school because no Christian conversation is allowed in the school. They will not hear it in church because they will never go to church because they've never been to church. And the Christians do not go to them and share the gospel. And so technically speaking, these girls have never rejected the gospel. They just don't know it. And as I was sharing with them about Christianity and why we are celebrating Christ, they were interested in listening. And Paul in Romans chapter 10, verse 14, he asks a very piercing question that I saw really coming to life. How can they believe in whom they have never heard? And how can they hear of whom no one has ever preached? And how can someone preach unless they have been sent? And I realized that the issue is not so much about rejecting the gospel as it is about going to tell the gospel and share the gospel with other people. And my challenge, just as I was listening to those girls and I was just reflecting about back home, is I wonder how many of us just take the simple opportunities we have at home in a very non-threatening way to tell the young people about the gospel. The things the youth do, the things the youth want to do can be influenced by Christ if you can only share the gospel to them. And we quickly realized when we came back from New Zealand that apparently the Ministry of Education here in Kenya is in the process of reviewing the PPI program. That is the Pastoral Program Initiative. It's a half-an-hour program every week where they give an opportunity for people in churches to go and share the gospel to the students, or Christians just to go, and it's really open. And the reason they're reviewing that part of the curriculum is because they've realized over the years it is not being used. And many schools waste that half an hour. And so the Ministry of Education wants to scrap it off from the curriculum. And I'm just wondering, for the parents seated here, we take our children to schools. We are Christians ourselves. Is there a way we can even offer ourselves to give half an hour a week in some of the schools we're associated with, and just use that opportunity to share the gospel to a generation that is quickly becoming not just unchurched, but simply one of those who have never had the gospel? Our young generations are actually becoming unreached if we don't take opportunities to share this gospel.